Hi, everyone. Again, this is the fourth interview of four interviews. We have Aaron Johannes Rosenberg with us. During these interviews, I want to have these real conversations with parents who are also doing their part in contributing to the disability movement and the community living movements forward. As you have heard in the other interviews, I want to hear experiences, challenges, and what keeps them going. I'm fascinated as a parent myself of what it is that gets us all up and want to make a better future for our children, because that is one link or a weaved link between each parent who has an exceptional needs child. Aaron, what does the future look like for our children? So how about you share, if you don't mind sharing a little about yourself, your family, and your loved one that had you immersed in the disability movement?
Yeah, sure. Good morning. Let's see. I got involved in with folks with disabilities before we had family members. Well, not really, but sort of before we had family members with disabilities. It's kind of a funny story, but so I was working on a project at SFU as part of my undergrad in education, um, uh, creating curriculum for prisoners, right? So that they could get like a head start on an education. And when they graduated, when went on parole, they'd already have a few courses under their belt, and then they could go on. And so a lot of them had had no access to higher education, and a lot of them had undocumented disabilities, learning disabilities, and things like that. So it was really interesting work. And then the project lost funding, and I needed a job. And the other thing that was happening concurrently, I guess, was that I was coming to the end of my teaching degree,
Mhm.
coming to the end of that education. And they'd had a lot of people who graduated as teachers, went into schools, and then said, I can't do this, and walked out, right? And so the department changed their policy, and they made you go do volunteer days before you ever did PDP, before you ever became a student teacher.
So is this the
Oh,
80s, the 70s? When are we?
sure. I have to count. I'm not good at math.
Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah.
About 30, 40 years ago.
About 80s, 80, 83 probably.
Mhm. Okay.
And so I went and I was on a path to become an elementary school teacher. I went and taught elementary school for a day and walked out of it thinking I never want to do this again. It was totally crazy. And then they said, "Oh, maybe you're better suited to a high school." And so I went into a high school. And at the end of the day, I was like, okay, I'm this cannot be my life or my career. Like I didn't
Mhm.
didn't really like teachers. And it was a particular time in education, right? So
Yes.
you had these big smoke-filled teachers' lounges where all the teachers were sitting around gossiping about all the parents and all the kids, and had the kids just reacting to everything. Um,
Mhm.
not a lot of not a lot of tools to deal with them. So then I went into this program at SFU, which was like if you've discovered that you're on the wrong track, what do you do? And so one of the things that they made us do was go interview three people who looked happy at work. And so I picked three people that I thought really seemed happy about what they were doing. Two of them were professors. And by the end of those interviews, they both got together and got me into a master's program. And they were like, yeah, you don't want to be a teacher. You you want to keep going. And then the third one was a woman that I'd never really understood what she did for her job,
Yes.
but she always seemed really happy when she was talking about it. She was talking about, going places and doing things and the people she was meeting and stuff. And so I went to interview her, and it turned out she worked in a group home and with people with physical disabilities. And so she worked in this group home, and she was so excited about what she was doing, and it was really exciting to hear about it. And so I kind of felt like these prisoners that I'd been working with who were separate in a separate place, they were in this jail, the
Yeah.
same the same kind of issues were like people in my backyard, right? But
Yes.
I didn't know they were there. And until I talked to her. And so anyway, halfway through the interview, she said, "Oh, you should definitely do this job." And she picked up the phone and phoned the executive director. It was like a
Right.
Sunday morning. He answered the call. He talked to me for like 20 minutes, hired me to start the next Friday
Mhm.
because I could drive, I could lift people, and
All right. You got to go to all those prerequisites. Yes. Yes.
I looked sane. Well, at the time, it was just like, the requirements were really low.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I started working, it was one of the biggest agencies in Vancouver. And I worked in probably 17 different homes that first
Yeah.
year. And I loved all of it.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get back to work. And when I was getting trained, the person who was doing the training said, so at some point, lots of people at some point realize this isn't the works they need to do. And
Mhm.
the people were from institutions. They were quite disfigured. They hadn't had any rehab and had all
Yeah.
kinds of behaviors. And she said, like often new staff come in to get hired, and really they just walk out, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to do that, do it without hurting anybody's feelings. Don't reject.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was
Absolutely.
like, yeah, I was like by the end of the shift, I was just like, sign me up. And
That's it. Well, isn't that it? Like even in the pedagogical approach, joy to teach children. And so for adults, we're looking for joy. What inspires us? What sparks that flame? So you found it as an adult after your
yeah,
degree. Yeah.
it was great. And so yeah, so then I went on to work for Spectrum Society for
Mhm.
30 years and worked my way up and became one of the three directors.
Mhm.
And did lots of stuff around training and education and community
Yes.
development stuff.
Yeah.
And concurrently finished my second master's degree, I guess. The first one I didn't finish, it was in English Lit. And for a bunch of reasons, I didn't pursue it. But then I went and did one in education, adult education,
Yeah.
and community development, and loved it. And
Wonderful.
so did a bunch of projects, and then retired from that. And as I was retiring, one of my friends who was teaching at Douglas College said, you should come and teach at the college, and that'd be fun for you. And
Right.
so I went to teach one course, fell in love with it again, and then ended up teaching
Yeah.
full time.
Wonderful. So where along this learning journey did you become a parent to a diverse needs
Right.
child?
My partner and I'm gay, and so he and I, very soon after we met, had been talking about kids, and we both wanted it. But I had decided that, if I didn't have kids by the time I was 40, I wasn't going to have kids, and I was
Yeah.
41. And so then
Hmm.
we went to a meeting with the Special Needs Adoption Society. And that's I'm not sure if it still exists, but it was a department of the ministry. So they had all these kids. So by virtue of having not been adopted by three, there was attachment disorders
Right.
and
Yeah.
or possible attachment disorders. And so then those kids were classified as having special needs. And
Right.
yeah, so
So are we still in the 80s or the 90s?
oh
Where are
no,
we? Okay.
90 99, our son was born, and we
Okay.
adopted him when he was 3, so
Okay.
2002.
Wow. Yes. Wow.
So
So 25 years?
yeah,
25 years parenting. Yeah.
the thing that happened as we were exploring that was that um, one of the parents that I knew that I think I'd met her through special education or Special Olympics, which I wasn't involved with really, but I used to take somebody.
Hmm.
And she was looking for respite for her kid, and so we did that on the weekends, and that went really well and it was really fun. And so she asked if we would do respite seriously. With my, I don't know if you can see it, but my
Yeah, I
thumb.
did. I saw that. What was that?
I don't know. I have something turned
Sorry,
on. Every
we'll
time
talk later about that. Yes,
every time I say something positive, it gives me a thumbs up.
love it.
So yeah, so we started doing respite on the weekends for her. And then social workers got to know us, and another family came up, and they had a mom who was in a difficult situation and had two kids, and was sort of in palliative care, and really wanted to know that her two kids, who both had autism, were going to have somewhere to land when it was time. And so we started spending weekends with those kids, and then quite quickly they moved in. So altogether we had like six kids, uh,
Wow.
foster kids, kids we adopted, kids who decided that we'd adopted them, whether we did or not. And um, and
Wow.
and then when I was much younger, I got involved in an adoption that didn't work out. And then
Yeah.
that person appeared much later, when they were like, I didn't get to adopt them when they were like 11, and then they
Yeah.
appeared when they were 22, knocking on the door saying, I think we should have,
Let me in.
yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. It's indicative of your heart. And so we know each other professionally. Let's remember how long we've known each other. I think about 12 years. We've met professionally, even though we've connected with the works of James Baldwin and Magnolia Trees, but professionally, like I've always admired you from afar. And especially, so if I can, this may be a good segue into path, that prominent work that it's such a creative way of expanding the learner's mind, like
mhm.
like support workers, for example, the layering and unwrapping. Can you please speak to that piece of work? I'd really love that drive and passion that got you there.
Yeah, path.
Isn't it path?
Yeah,
Isn't
path.
it?
So
Yeah.
PATH used to stand for Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope.
Yeah.
And then they decided that they didn't really want to do acronyms anymore, which I think was a good decision.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, and so now it's just a path. It's just the kind of exploration and documentation of a certain path. You
Yeah.
bring a bunch of people together. And then it's got 7 parts. And in BC, I'm probably one of two or three trainers who've been doing it. And I've trained lots of people in schools and for adult community over the years. And I've kind of stopped back. But one of the things I'm finding really interesting about Path, and interesting about what you're studying, is how well during the pandemic, we had to start teaching it online, right? Because it was part of a curriculum I was teaching.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, this is never going to work. Like if you ever need like a one-to-one
Right? Yes.
in-person training, it's got to be Path. But the online thing actually worked perfectly. It was
Wow.
amazing. And then we started doing it online in the community. So yeah, so Path. So it's got 7 parts, and you kind of start with a dream future. And so often with families and folks with disabilities, they've never had a real opportunity to talk about what their dreams are. And so you kind
Mhm.
of engage them in that conversation, like what are the dreams that you've got? And they've often, in the best cases, have friends and family with them while they're having this discussion. And people often will remember things that you said or dreamed or wanted, when you've forgotten, which I think is kind of the point. Like we get so busy we forget what our dreams are.
Yes. 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 So when we look at your work, and I only know of the creative side, right? And I see how that aligns with the humanistic
Mhm.
philosophy. And that is my type of teaching. I've figured it out. I look at the whole person, because each piece, if we want an individual to learn, we have to look at the whole person. So because that's why I will be, the side comment, I will be signing up for Path because I really want to learn that. Now, if we look at family advocacy piece, so what message would you have for families who say, well, I don't know what to do. I have, because there are families who have ideas, but they don't know what to do. So based on your experience in all these years of knowledge and expertise, and you've seen the change of the community living movement, and now the self-advocates have taken off and their lived experiences mattered and their voice mattered, but there's still families on the side, younger families, or even like families like mine. Saffron doesn't want to move out. So advocacy wise, what would you say, what would you have to say if you have a perspective on a family's involvement in advocating for their loved one as a child or an adult?
That it's never too early to teach your kid advocacy, self-advocacy skills.
Yeah.
And that by not doing that, you're actually endangering your kids.
Yeah.
First thing, one of the first things when I used to work out of Woodlands for a while, just because I was part of a downsizing project that got held up. So I ended up working kind of out of there for like 4 months and met a wonderful woman, Eleanor McEwen, who was their speech language pathologist and a great
Yes.
advocate for people within a really hard system, but she wouldn't like give up on the system because it was all
Mhm.
they and Eleanor used to teach sign language to people at Woodlands, and then when people moved into the community, would continue doing that. And I always remember I asked her how to say no, and she just stopped everything, and she said, "You can't teach anybody to say no unless you're actually going to pay attention when they say no, and they might be saying no to anything. And so, are you really okay with that?" And I said,
Right.
"Yes, I was." And so, one of the cool things about Path is it's got a veto, a built-in veto. And so the person who's getting a path, which could be the person with a disability, or it could be their parents, or could be anybody, can say no at any point. Can say, no, I don't want that. I'm glad you've got that dream for me, and I appreciate your support, and I don't want to do that, right? Because
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
mom wanted me to be a banker, right?
I know.
Like,
Our families always have our dreams, but I think you hit on a really important point, how we, like, as parents, especially somebody like me whose daughter will tell me I do not want to move away. So it puts me in a position, and we really have to be cognizant that we don't influence that adult's choices and decisions. And so if there are parents out there who want their child to live together or whatever, how do they support their child's autonomy and their voice? Would you like to share, like, what strategies do you use? What do you with your children?
it's the big friction, right? And
Yes.
in my research on self-advocacy and with self-advocate leaders, one of the things that surprised me that they consistently said, and it was like, people from Ontario to BC and Ireland that I was interviewing, was that what parents want is different from what self-advocates want, because parents always want what's safe, right?
Mm,
And they always want to know that something's going to continue and it's going to be
yeah.
guaranteed, and all
Yes.
those things that make us feel
Yes.
better about stuff, right? And
Well, I shared my little fear in the beginning, right? Yeah. Sorry to
and
interrupt you.
and self-advocates often want to, the adventure. They right?
Absolutely.
Like
Yes.
they have aspirations. They want certain things. And so, one of my self-advocate friends said, so it's always going to be there. And he said, we're in a system that was created by parents. Like, parents designed
Yeah.
CLBC, designed the school system.
Yes.
That was all parents who
Yes.
created all these agencies that support us. And the
Yes.
and the objective of all those things is to keep people safe, right?
Yes.
And that might not necessarily be what the person wants, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. But does a family, so culturally, I'm speaking culturally. So let's tap into that little friction. So culturally, um, we're close knit, like my family, like my children and I, we're close knit. So is there a place for families other than, like, I see we're in this space where we didn't have a self-advocacy movement about 30, 40 years ago. We have one.
Right.
It's strong, it's growing, they're doing their work. And I'm, as a parent, supportive of that. But as a parent, I'm not very supportive of these systems that are still in place. So we are in that place where we're moving and moving these pieces where individuals can have a voice and they're in the center of that voice rather than they're put into a little melting pot. So as a parent, and culturally, like, I'm trying to understand family. Is there still a place for families in the disability movement? Maybe that's the question.
Yes, the most important work in BC is being done by the Family Support Institute, right? And so, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's going to be friction, right?
Mhm.
It's going to be two people wanting different things.
Yeah.
And if that's not voiced, right, then you're going
Yes.
to run into the same problem. But if
Yes.
you voice it, just like we had to do with our parents and our family,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. I don't even talk to my family, right? So
I had
yeah.
to tell my mom I had no interest in being a banker. I'm not even good at math, right? And
Well, even in my culture, everybody's got to be a doctor. That was the funniest thing. Never did I tell my children you have to be a doctor, and my eldest went off to be a doctor, and that was just like, oh my goodness. And I just said, I just need you to be in a profession, you get a job, right? So, but yeah, so it is our parents, and we all have dreams for our children, right? Yeah.
see, and I come from a farming background, very working class, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't want you to be a doctor.
That's so funny.
Right?
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
and then I did. Um,
Oh my
so
goodness.
so
Yeah,
so I think the stuff that's not voiced has, been the one of the big important roles for families
yeah.
has been like, you'll be in this room full of all these people with this certain language and professionalism and
Mhm.
gobbledygook, and then you'll have some mom who just says, I need to tell you a story, right? And she
Yes.
tells you the story that moves your heart, that moves everything. And the
Yeah.
movement moves because of the story.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so paying attention to and creating opportunities to tell those stories,
Yes.
that's really been my role, I think, in the last 10 years or so, right?
As a parent, sharing stories and experience. Is that what it?
Um, no, more as a facilitator,
Okay.
creating opportunities for people to tell those stories and draw
Right.
the stories and then tell other people and stuff. Um,
Yes.
yeah, no, the thing for me as a parent, it's a quite different role than being a facilitator, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
always in interesting ways. Like one of my first experiences as an adoptive dad was that I got a call from Women and Children's Hospital. They had a family with a kid with autism. The kid had been in crisis. He'd ended up in the hospital, and they said, and everything we try isn't working, and we don't know what to do. And we've heard really good things about you, and so
Hmm.
can come to this meeting and talk about it. And so I went to this meeting at Women and Children's and big glass room and all these professionals, and then this little family. It was just
Yeah.
like, so stressed, right?
Yeah. I remember those meetings. So
Yeah.
intimidating.
Yeah.
So, so
And
while we wrap, oh,
I,
sorry, go ahead.
just let me finish the
Sure.
story.
Oh, sorry. I'm so
It,
sorry.
it was a real turning point for me because, so I gave them a bunch of ideas about what to do to include their kid in different ways in the community and help them make some connections and stuff. And the family was like, you're the first person. We've been here for a month. You're the first person who's made any sense at all. Like, why aren't you here? And the doctors and the social workers were all like, oh boy, I guess they're not going to sue us now because now they've got some ideas or, and so they were all really grateful and the feedback was really good. And, they were asking about my future availability. And then as it happened, we'd adopted this little kid who had a bunch of diagnoses and we had a
Hmm.
meeting about him, right? And a few days later, And I got there, it's the same team of people in the same room. And I went to sit at the place that I'd sat when I was there talking to this family. I went to sit in the same seat. And the doctors went, whoa, 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 no, no, you're not on this side of the table. You're on that side of the table. This is the professional side, and that's the family side of the table. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. And I went and sat over there. And then they proceeded to just pontificate about my kid. That some of them had only met maybe once or twice, and we'd
Mhm.
spent like every day with them for, months at that point. Now it's years. And 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 they were just, they was just so clear that, just you're just a family. And even though I was the same person I was last week, I was
Mm.
the professional, right? So
Yes,
yeah,
yes. So like I think I relate to that. I'm like again, like I shared, I go through, I see situations through the holistic view.
right,
And we're human. It's a human business. We've got people, we've got cultures. There's so much intersectionality happening we need to
right,
consider. And I think this whole clinical and again medical side is very clinical, but I think as we're in this evolution of learning about disabilities and the movement, I find personally we're moving away from that. And I want us to come back to the real stories that we may have differing opinions. Like there's something you've shared I may not agree with, but it doesn't matter. We can still talk and we can still converse. That's where the learning and that's where the growth happens. So as we tie up, because I don't want us to get kicked off. So if you had a message for families in the future, as a parent, you chose to be a parent to a diverse needs, and that itself is an interesting, fascinating aspect of what you chose to do. So if you had a message for parents in the future who choose or do have children with diverse needs, what hope or what advice would you give to them?
talking to other parents, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think, when our son, we'd had a bunch of IEPs for my son that hadn't felt good at all. And we were getting ready for one in maybe like grade 4 or something. So he'd been with us for 7 years. And I was talking to a friend, and I said, "Oh, we've got this IEP coming up, and blah 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 blah. It's going to be awful and stuff." And she said, "No, that's not how you do an IEP. How you do an IEP is you come up with an agenda. You come up with your son with some goals that he wants to work on, and then you present it." And I said,
yes,
"No, that's not how it works. They're saying
mm-hmm.
they've got 22 minutes, and I get there, and they've got the form filled out, and they're like, we just have to walk through this." And she said, "Have you heard of the Family Support Institute?" Right.
Yeah,
And she was a volunteer there. And she said, why don't I help you with this? Because I know how to do this. And
mm-hmm.
so she called the resource teacher and introduced herself, and she got a copy of the agenda. And she said, "Okay, that's great. I'm fixing this agenda, and then I'll send it back to you." So she totally changed their agenda, right?
Right,
Our agenda. And then she came to the meeting with us, and it was a completely different meeting. And I've been supporting the Family Support Institute ever
yeah.
since, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where we met because I think that's where we connected because
I
I
know.
volunteered as a resource parent.
When you were talking about how long have we known each other, it feels like I've known you forever. So
I know, I
I
know.
can't, I can't
We just
remember.
connect, right? We just get each other. And that's what happens, right? With families, we find our tribe because there's that unsaid piece that we don't need to say, oh, I already get it. I understand their life.
Yeah,
But, stuff like James Baldwin and magnolia trees, those are other connections that we have. But this whole, our personal life, if you said to me, well, I forgot because blah, 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 I already understand it's not intentional. It's not that you don't find you're not ghosting me. I understand what your home life is and what you carry. So I think that's why we've just known we've known
right.
each other. And I think families and whoever watch this will relate, and they will say, and that's my hope, is that they will see this and they will say, wow, I can do this. I can do something and make a difference for my child to have an autonomous voice. And I'll connect them to the self-advocacy people. And that is my hope, that we show parents there's other side of service provider systems. There's we just got to think of the imaginable, and the potential is there. And I really appreciate, Erin, you joining me and sharing in this assignment. And I will, of course, connect with you and on Facebook, or if I pop by in Vancouver.
I
And
just want people to know I didn't ghost you.
you didn't. No, you got me.
I always look forward to my connections with you. But
Yeah.
you got off social media for a little while there.
I did. And this is the funny thing, I'm forced back. But it is, if it's meant to be, it is. And it's a learning curve. So I'm here. Thank you, Erin. I'm just
Yeah.
going to turn off the recording. Thank you, everybody.
Great talking to you.
Yeah.